The sun was beginning to set over Accra, and the air buzzed with excitement as families prepared for New Year's Eve. In one large house filled with chatter, Amma stood by the kitchen doorway, watching her mother and aunts stir pots of jollof rice and spicy goat stew. The smell of fried plantains floated through the air, mixing with the laughter of cousins running around in shiny new clothes. Amma smiled, her heart warm with the thought of seeing relatives she hadn't met in months. For her, this night was about joy, reunion, and stepping into the new year surrounded by love. But not everyone in the house shared her spirit. Her younger sister, Nana, leaned against the wall with folded arms, her eyes sharp and calculating. Where Amma saw family, Nana saw an audience. She had already made up her mind that this was the perfect night to remind everyone that Amma was the quiet one, the sister who never quite shined. Nana, dressed in a sparkling gold dress and showing off her latest handbag, whispered sly comments under her breath, planning her moment to embarrass Amma. As the house filled with music and the glow of fairy lights, Amma carried trays of drinks to the living room, happily greeting uncles and aunties who teased her gently about her calm nature. She didn't notice Nana's smirk from across the room. Amma was thinking only of laughter and celebration, but Nana was already setting the stage for something far less kind. Dinner had started beautifully. The long wooden table was crowded with steaming bowls of food, glasses clinking, and the sound of uncles arguing about football, while children reached for extra pieces of chicken. Amma sat quietly at the far end, enjoying her plate of jollof and watching her family laugh. She didn't always speak the loudest, but she loved moments like this, being surrounded by people she grew up with, hearing the familiar mix of Twi and English float through the air. Then, out of nowhere, Nana decided it was time. She leaned forward in her chair, her voice cutting through the chatter. "You know," she said loudly, her eyes fixed on Amma, "some of us actually have something to show for our lives. Others," she paused, flashing a cruel smile, "are just sitting there, still a failure, still waiting for life to happen." For a moment, silence hung over the table. Forks froze in midair. Then a few cousins chuckled nervously, and one uncle even laughed out loud, thinking maybe Nana was just teasing. But Nana didn't stop. She leaned back with her arms crossed, enjoying the attention. "Tell me, Amma," she pressed on, "what exactly have you done? You don't have a good job. You don't dress like success. You don't even belong at this table. You're just ordinary. And who wants to be ordinary?" Amma's throat tightened. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, waiting to see how she would react. Her chest burned, but she forced herself to sit still. Around her, whispers began to ripple, some relatives shaking their heads, others giggling under their breath. Nana's words had landed, and the room suddenly felt heavy, the laughter that once filled it now sharp and mocking. One aunt tried to lighten the moment, clapping her hands and saying, "Oh, Nana, don't be so harsh. It's New Year's Eve. Let's eat." But the damage was done. The insult hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Even as people returned to their food, their glances kept sliding back to Amma, some pitying, some amused. Nana, satisfied, picked up her wine glass and sipped slowly, her eyes never leaving her sister. Amma wanted to say something, anything, to defend herself, but the words stuck in her chest. She stared at her plate, her appetite gone, feeling the walls of the room closing in. It wasn't just the insult itself. It was the way everyone had heard it, the way some had laughed, the way her sister had turned her into the night's entertainment. For Amma, the food had lost its taste, the music seemed distant, and all she could feel was the sting of humiliation. Deep down, though, something else was rising inside her, quiet but strong. While Nana celebrated her victory at the table, Amma sat in silence, her heart beginning to form a response. Not tonight, but soon. Amma finally gathered the courage to speak. Her hands trembled under the table, but she lifted her head and looked directly at her sister. "Nana," she said softly, though her voice shook, "you don't have to speak to me like that. We are family." "Aye." But Nana cut her off with a sharp laugh. "Family? Please. You're only sitting here because of pity. No one even notices you unless I point it out. Don't act like you're on my level." The words sliced through the room like a knife. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to challenge Nana. She had always been the loud, dazzling one, and most people simply let her have her way. Amma swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in her eye. She pushed her chair back and stood up, her heart racing. "I'm not worthless, Nana," she said, her voice stronger now, surprising even herself. "You may laugh at me, but you don't know everything." The room went silent. Relatives paused mid-bite, watching the two sisters face off. Nana narrowed her eyes, her smile fading. For a brief moment, it seemed like she might back down. But then she stood, heels clicking against the floor, and marched toward the hallway. "If you're so sure of yourself," she snapped, "then prove it. Otherwise, stay out of my way." Amma followed, desperate to explain, desperate not to let the insult linger. "Nana, please. I don't want to fight. But before she could finish, Nana reached the front door, yanked it open, and with one swift, dramatic move, slammed it in Alma's face. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. Alma staggered back, the cool night air rushing against her skin. She stood outside on the porch, staring at the closed door, her chest rising and falling quickly. The music inside was muffled now, but she could still hear the whispers. Through the curtains, she caught glimpses of relatives peeking toward the doorway, some with wide eyes, others shaking their heads. No one moved to open the door for her. The harm wasn't just in the door slam, it was in the humiliation. She had been shut out in front of everyone, her dignity stripped away like an old coat. The December night in Accra was chilly, and the stars above seemed distant and cold. Alma wrapped her arms around herself, her breath visible in the air. Her heart burned, but it wasn't only from pain. It was something deeper, something stronger. Anger and shame blended into determination. She would not cry, not here, not now. If Nana thought she had won, she was wrong. Standing in the night, Alma lifted her chin, her mind already reaching back to memories and truths that no one else in the house knew. The door might have been slammed on her, but she wasn't finished. Not by far. The night air wrapped around Alma as she stood outside, but her mind was far away from the whispers and laughter inside the house. Her thoughts drifted back to the past, to the quiet choices she had made when no one was paying attention. Everyone thought of her as the sister who never did much, the one who let life pass her by. But Alma knew something they didn't. She had been preparing for this moment for years. When their late uncle passed away, most of the family focused on who would get his car, his jewelry, and the things that shined on the surface. Nana, of course, had laughed when Alma accepted the old folder of papers their uncle left her. Property documents? Boring. Nana had sneered. She wanted the things people could see immediately, the things that glittered. Alma, on the other hand, quietly held on to those papers like a treasure chest. She remembered sitting in a lawyer's office, carefully listening as he explained the value of the land her uncle had given her. At first, it didn't seem like much, just empty plots and a half-finished house. But Alma was patient. She saved money, made small investments, and slowly worked with the lawyer to put everything in her name. Every year, while Nana showed off borrowed handbags, rented cars, and fake designer shoes, Alma built brick by brick, signature by signature. She thought of the first small piece of land she sold to a developer, the bank transfer that made her heart skip with excitement. Instead of spending recklessly, she put it straight into more investments, shares, rental projects, even fixing up the old house their uncle left behind. She never boasted, never told a soul. It wasn't her way. She preferred silence, the kind that grows into strength. Nana loved the spotlight. She posted endless photos on social media, sipping cocktails at hotels she couldn't afford, flashing jewelry bought on credit, always talking louder than everyone else. People believed her, because she looked the part of success. Alma, meanwhile, wore simple dresses, carried no designer bags, and quietly signed papers that would one day change everything. Now, standing in the cool night, Alma could almost hear her uncle's voice. He had once told her, "Real wealth is not in showing, it's in keeping. Let your roots grow deep before the fruit shows." She finally understood what he meant. Nana had built her life on appearances, but Alma had built hers on foundations that could not be shaken. Her chest tightened, not with shame anymore, but with power she had kept hidden for too long. The same family laughing inside had no idea that the very ground beneath their feet, the house where they sat eating, drinking, and mocking her, was tied to her name. Nana had slammed the door, thinking she was throwing Alma out. But Alma knew the truth. She wasn't the outsider. She was the owner. And soon everyone would know. Alma stayed on the porch for a long while, breathing slowly until the sting in her chest began to settle. She could have banged on the door, shouted, or demanded her family let her back in. She could have argued with Nana in front of everyone. But that wasn't her way. She knew anger would only feed her sister's fire. Instead, she decided to do something far more powerful, let the truth reveal itself. Her phone was still in her bag. She pulled it out, her fingers steady now, and scrolled to a familiar number. It was her lawyer, Mr. Mensah, the one who had walked with her every step of her quiet journey. He answered quickly, his voice warm. "Alma, Happy New Year's Eve." "Happy New Year," Alma said, her voice calm but firm. "It's time. I want everything ready tonight. The papers, the announcement, everything we talked about." There was a brief pause, then the lawyer replied, "Understood. I'll bring the documents over within the hour. Are you sure you want to do this tonight?" Alma looked through the glass at her sister laughing inside, acting like she had already won. She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Yes. Tonight is perfect." After ending the call, Alma dialed another number, this time for Kojo, the event organizer she had quietly hired weeks ago. At the time, she wasn't even sure she would go through with her plan, but something in her had told her to prepare. Kojo picked up with music blaring in the background. Madam Amma, are we good to go? He asked eagerly. We are, Amma said simply. At midnight, everything must happen exactly as planned. Lights, announcement, and the reveal. Make sure the projector is set up and ready. Don't worry, Kojo replied. It will be unforgettable. Amma ended the call and slipped the phone back into her bag. For the first time that night, she allowed herself to smile. She wasn't just reacting to Nana's cruelty. She was orchestrating something larger, something that would shift the room in a way no insult ever could. Inside the house, laughter and clinking glasses continued. No one knew what was coming. Nana probably thought she had silenced her sister, shut her out into the night like an unwanted guest. But Amma wasn't on the outside anymore. She was standing on the edge of her own moment, holding back the tide until the perfect second arrived. The fairy lights twinkled across the porch, and the sound of distant fireworks being tested echoed over the city. Amma wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her calm growing stronger. She wasn't waiting for revenge, she was waiting for revelation. Tonight, when the clock struck 12, the whole family would see who she truly was. And this time, no one would laugh. The house was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Guests danced between the tables, some still nibbling at leftover bites of jollof and fried plantain. Nana, glowing in her golden dress, was at the center of it all, holding court like a queen who had won the night. Amma watched from the shadows of the hallway, her calm presence unnoticed by most, but her mind focused and sharp. No one expected her to return so soon. After the door had slammed in her face, the whispers had started. Some thought she had gone home, defeated and humiliated. Others assumed she would come back, flustered and apologetic. But Amma had no intention of begging or explaining herself. She had waited, planned, and built her moment carefully. Tonight, the truth would speak louder than any apology ever could. She stepped into the living room quietly, her dress simple, her posture straight, her eyes calm. Conversations faltered for a second when people noticed her, and then resumed as guests assumed she had come to beg or make excuses. Nana's smile faltered slightly, though she quickly recovered, thinking Amma's return would only be another opportunity to humiliate her. Amma moved slowly through the crowd, nodding politely to distant cousins and aunts who glanced at her with a mix of curiosity and unease. Her smile was soft but mysterious, like she knew something everyone else didn't. Nana's eyes narrowed, and a few guests leaned closer, sensing the tension but unsure why. The music softened slightly as someone announced that the countdown to midnight would begin soon. Amma found a quiet spot near the center of the room, just far enough to observe but close enough to be seen. She didn't speak, she didn't flinch. She simply stood there, calm as a river while everyone else buzzed with excitement. As the clock ticked toward the final minutes, the air felt charged. Glasses were raised, children were bouncing with excitement, and Nana's laughter grew louder, perhaps to mask the tiny crack of uncertainty forming in her composure. Amma, in contrast, remained still. Her calm smile seemed to draw people's attention, though no one could say why. She thought of the lawyer's call, the event organizer's preparations, and the documents waiting to reveal what she had built in secret. Every insult, every whisper, every door slammed in her face had led to this moment. The tension in the room was palpable, but she did not let it disturb her. Instead, she embraced it, knowing that patience had become her ally. The seconds drew closer. Guests counted aloud. 10, 9, 8. Amma's eyes flicked toward Nana for the first time. Her sister's confidence was still there, but a flicker of uncertainty had appeared, almost imperceptible. Amma's mysterious smile deepened. She didn't need to rush or force the moment. The clock would do that for her. And when it did, the night would change forever. The last seconds of the year ticked away, and the chatter in the room grew louder with excitement. 3, 2, 1, someone shouted, and the first bursts of fireworks lit the sky above Accra, painting it in gold, red, and green. Glasses clinked, and cheers echoed through the house as the new year arrived. People hugged and laughed, their faces glowing in the colorful light from outside. Amma stepped forward, her calm smile still in place. She raised her hand slightly, and the room slowly quieted. All eyes turned toward her, some curious, some confused, and some still expecting the embarrassed sister to stumble over words. Amma took a deep breath, letting the moment stretch, giving everyone time to realize that she was not here to beg or apologize. Then she spoke, her voice clear and steady. "Happy New Year, everyone," she began, her eyes briefly meeting each relative's gaze. "This house, the land it sits on, belongs to me." A ripple of shock ran through the room. Glasses froze midair. Nana's laughter caught in her throat, her smile faltering. People exchanged confused glances. "What do you mean?" one uncle asked, stepping closer. Amma lifted a folder from her hands and set it carefully on the table. "I inherited this property years ago from our late uncle," she said, opening it to show the official documents, stamped and signed. I have invested quietly, worked with lawyers, and ensured everything is legally in my name. This house, this land, everything you are celebrating on tonight, is mine. The fireworks outside continued, brilliant explosions reflecting off the windows, creating a surreal glow around Amma. She let the moment linger, letting the sound of the city and the cheering outside underscore her words. Some guests began murmuring, some whispering quickly to each other, trying to process the revelation. Nana, who had been the center of attention for the entire night, her hand trembled slightly as she reached toward her glass. Her golden dress seemed suddenly smaller under the weight of the silence that had fallen. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Amma remained calm, almost serene, as she glanced around the room. Her patience and quiet work had built more than wealth. It had built a moment of undeniable truth. The energy shifted, subtly at first, then strongly, as the family realized that the sister they had dismissed as ordinary had been quietly writing her own story all along. Outside, the fireworks reached their peak, sparks raining down like gold confetti. Amma stepped slightly toward the windows, letting the brilliant light highlight her expression, confident, composed, and victorious. The night air, the crackling fireworks, the stunned faces, all of it came together in a perfect moment. Tonight, she was not just Amma, the quiet sister. She was Amma, the owner, the one who had turned patience and diligence into a dazzling triumph. The room, once filled with laughter and mockery, now held an electric mix of awe and disbelief. And Amma knew, with a quiet certainty, that this was only the beginning. Amma walked slowly toward the center of the room, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. The guests, still stunned from her revelation about the property, parted slightly to give her space. Nana, standing near the dining table, had gone pale. Her confidence, which had dominated the night, was cracking under the weight of Amma's calm power. Amma reached into her bag and pulled out the official deed papers, the thick folder heavy with legal authority. She held it firmly, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of what she had quietly built over the years. She turned toward Nana, her gaze steady, and extended the folder. "Nana," she said clearly, her voice calm but carrying across the room, "this is for you." Nana blinked, unsure whether to take it or walk away. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice faltering. What is this?" Amma didn't flinch. She met her sister's gaze directly. "These are the deed papers for this house and the land it sits on. Everything you've been celebrating on tonight, everything you thought you could claim, it's mine. Legally mine." The room went silent again. Guests shifted in their seats, whispers breaking out in small clusters. Some leaned forward, trying to see the documents, while others just stared at Nana, who was frozen as if rooted to the spot. "You slammed the door, Nana," Amma continued, her tone steady and deliberate, "but you slammed it in my own house." Her words echoed in the room, carrying both authority and quiet satisfaction. The effect was immediate. Gasps filled the space as relatives turned toward Nana, their expressions a mixture of shock, disbelief, and slowly judgment. Nana's mouth opened again, but no words came. She looked at the papers, then at Amma, then at the faces around her. For the first time that night, she was no longer in control. Her gold dress sparkled under the lights, but it couldn't hide the growing panic in her eyes. The borrowed confidence, the flashy display of wealth, it all felt meaningless now. Amma placed the folder gently on the table in front of her sister, making sure everyone could see. She took a small step back, letting the room absorb the moment. Relatives whispered, murmured, and some even gasped aloud. Children stopped fidgeting. The air was thick with tension and awe. She didn't need to shout or cry. Her calm presence, the years of quiet planning, and the weight of the legal truth spoke louder than any argument could. Nana, once the center of attention, was now confronted by her own arrogance, exposed in front of the entire family. Amma's heart remained steady. She had waited, planned, and endured insults and humiliation. Now, as the guests stared and whispered, she finally let the truth shine, letting it speak for itself. The night had turned, and the balance of power had shifted entirely. The folder on the table was more than papers. It was proof, victory, and the quiet strength that had always been Amma's. And in that moment, every guest understood. The quiet sister had finally taken her place, and no one could take it away. Nana stood frozen, staring at the deed papers on the table. Her hands trembled slightly, and for the first time that night, her confident smile had vanished. She looked around the room, hoping someone, anyone, would speak up in her favor, but instead, she met a sea of faces that reflected shock, disbelief, and slowly judgment. The laughter, whispers, and polite nods of admiration that had always been her audience were gone. Relatives who had spent the night chuckling at her antics now shook their heads, some murmuring under their breath. "I can't believe she did all this quietly," one aunt whispered to another. "All this time, and we thought Amma was nothing," an uncle added, his eyes fixed on Nana with a hint of disapproval. Even cousins who had teased Amma earlier seemed to lean in, their expressions now full of respect for her sister's patience and quiet determination. Nana's gold dress, which had shined so brightly under the lights, seemed to mock her now. She felt small, stripped of the power she had flaunted so confidently. Every laugh she had shared, every boast she had made, suddenly felt hollow. She realized painfully that all her noise, all her attempts to dominate and humiliate, had been meaningless against Amma's quiet strength. Her mind raced, trying to find a way out, a word, a gesture that could salvage her pride, but it was too late. The room had shifted. The energy had changed. Amma's calm, collected presence, combined with years of silent preparation, had turned the entire evening upside down. Nana's arrogance, which had once commanded attention, now made her look small and foolish. She tried to speak, her voice breaking slightly. "Amma, But no one moved to encourage her, no one waited for an excuse. The relatives had seen enough. Nana's words, once sharp and cruel, had bounced back at her. Her insults, her smirks, her laughter, all of it had been powerless against the truth Amma had built quietly, methodically, and with patience. Amma, still calm, watched her sister crumble. She didn't gloat or mock, she didn't need to. The quiet satisfaction in her eyes was enough. Every glance at Nana, every breath of patience she had maintained through years of being underestimated, now carried weight. Nana's silence spoke louder than any words ever could. She was cornered, exposed, and humbled in front of the family. The guests whispered, some shaking their heads in awe, others exchanging glances as if acknowledging a lesson they had all witnessed. Amma's quiet strength had done what Nana's loud confidence never could. The war, which had begun with slights and insults, had ended with dignity, patience, and undeniable truth. For Nana, the realization hit like a wave. She had underestimated her sister, mocked her, tried to humiliate her, and thought herself victorious. But now she saw the cost. Her arrogance crumbled, her pride was shattered, and Amma's quiet, steady determination had won. Not just the house, not just the land, but the undeniable respect of everyone in the room. Nana's shock was complete. The room, once a stage for her bravado, had become a testament to Amma's patience, resilience, and triumph. And for the first time that night, Nana had no words, no power, and no escape. Amma stepped out onto the porch, the night sky alive with fireworks that painted across in bursts of red, gold, and green. Each explosion mirrored the glow of her own heartbeat, steady, strong, and full of promise. The cool night air brushed against her face, carrying the distant laughter and chatter from the party inside, now tinged with awe and quiet whispers. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, to feel the weight of the year lifting from her shoulders. She looked at the sky, letting the lights reflect in her eyes, and smiled. This was more than a celebration of the new year. It was the start of her own chapter, written in patience, quiet work, and unwavering determination. She had endured insults, humiliation, and doubt, yet none of it had shaken her. The fireworks were a perfect echo of her triumph, brilliant, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Amma's thoughts briefly flicked to Nana, still inside, facing the stunned silence of relatives and the heavy truth of her actions. She didn't feel anger anymore, only clarity. While her sister had relied on noise, appearances, and borrowed confidence, Amma had built something real, lasting, and unshakable. She would continue her life with dignity, letting truth and integrity guide her steps. With a deep, steadying breath, Amma raised her arms slightly, embracing the cool wind and the glowing night. The new year had arrived, carrying with it not just a change in date, but a symbol of her fresh beginning. She turned her gaze toward the city lights below, feeling the full weight of her independence, her ownership, and her quiet victory. Amma knew one thing clearly. She would move forward with grace and strength, while the consequences of the night, Nana's arrogance, cruelty, and choices, would settle squarely on her sister. And in that moment, under the sparkling sky, Amma felt truly free.